There we go. All right. I think I had my microphone muted. Give me just a second here to set a couple things up. I'm trying to open my chat right now. And we can go ahead and get started. For those that are joining us a little bit early here, welcome. Let me know if you can hear me. Say something in chat, and we will get started in just a moment. We'll give some time for some people to pop in here. But if you don't know who I am Follygon, and I stream here on the Pixelogic ZBrush channel every Tuesday at 3 p.m. PST. Every Tuesday. And I stream over on my channel. You can just Google Follygon at noon EST on Fridays. But tonight, or let's see, last week we did a kind of a quick session of concepting a bunch of ideas. And tonight, I figured we should do something a little bit more specific. So I found a boot online in my spare time. I've been modeling some shoes for a character I'm working on. So I thought it would be cool, since I'm kind of doing that and kind of just getting some, I guess, practice in just modeling shoes. It's been a while since I've done the type of shoe that I'm doing right now. I wanted to do a boot tonight. So I just went online and Googled boot real quick and found, let's see, where's my browser there? A Timberland boot real quick. If you guys are looking for clothing references, I actually find that if you go to like a shopping website, typically they have some pretty high resolution photos that you can steal. Just download a couple of these. So that's what we're gonna be using tonight for our reference. And I'll talk about some of the tools and techniques that I use to create those. Again, if you guys don't know who I am, I'm Follygon. I don't have links anywhere on the page to my stuff, but like I said, if you just Google Follygon, you'll find my Gumroad where I put up all my courses, tutorials, brushes, materials, custom UI, all that kind of stuff. So if you're interested in that, check that out, as well as my ArtStation, which you can find with a quick Google, and then my YouTube channel, where I upload all the stuff that I do during my personal streams and some other tutorials as well. We've been doing some live critiques lately, which have been a lot of fun. So if you guys are interested in getting some of your stuff critiqued over on my channel, just head on over to my YouTube channel and you'll find the instructions for that in one of those critique videos. But yes, I believe that's all. Give some more time here for a couple people to pop in and say hello. But welcome, Mock. Mock, you can hear me? Awesome. Beautiful. Perfect. Let me check on one thing here really fast. And I'll give it like one more minute. So I'll explain the image tool that I'll be using for references tonight for those that are unfamiliar. This is a little thing built into ZBrush called Spotlight. If you guys are unfamiliar with this, it's up in your texture menu, and you can actually load and save these spotlights. Speaking of that, let's click on save and save out this spotlight, just in case if we crash later, so we can get that spotlight loaded back in very quickly. Essentially what this does is it imports your images for you, and then you can individually manipulate, control, scale, rotate, all sorts of different stuff with these. And typically it's used for projection painting, or even for projecting sculptural form. Think of it kind of like a stencil maybe. But what I like to use it for, I like to use it for reference images. So if you go into your, I have to remember, I think it's under samples. So it's in your brush menu. I want to say under samples. It is, yes. Spotlight projection. So if you turn this off, your brushes will no longer project through your images that you load into here, and then you can use them as reference images, much like what I'm doing right now for our good old boot buddy here. But I think that's enough time talking about what we're gonna do. I say we go ahead and get started. Welcome, Allie. Huge fan. Well, thank you. Appreciate that very much. Welcome. Welcome to tonight's stream, as well as everybody else. Don't feel like you gotta say hi in chat. It's cool to creep in the background. I do that myself on my streams that I go check out. But yes, if you don't already, go grab some tea for yourself. Tea is the fuel that feeds my sculpting prowess. And tonight that fuel is green tea. Green tea is my chill tea. I go for chai when I'm getting up in the morning, green tea on the DL. Ah, nice and cozy. Keeps me warm too. But we got that. Got our boot images, and we've given plenty of time for people to join us. So let's go ahead and start sculpting our boot. So I think the way that I'm going to start this, I have the 3/4 image. I think I'm going to start by kind of blocking out the profile of the shape. Now I haven't really looked at this too much, and I kind of did that on purpose because I want to kind of show you guys my thought process as I'm looking at stuff like this. So from what I can tell, it looks like if we're just looking at the leather part of the boot, which is going to be the part that I block out first, it is split into maybe three kind of major parts here. So there's this larger form here. We're going to first start off by blocking out this major shape. Then we're going to split it up. So we got this big shape here, right? The general shoe silhouette. And then it looks like we have kind of these two kind of, or it's one shape kind of wrapping around the backside for the tongue to slip up through there. So that's another kind of chunk there. And then there's this third kind of chunk in the background just laying on top of that. So let's go ahead and start by just kind of taking a sphere. Maybe we can use Dynamesh. It doesn't really matter to me. If there's any specific tools that anybody has questions about, don't feel like you have to wait till I'm using that specific tool. Feel free to ask any questions at any time, and we'll do our best to answer what we can. But yeah, just a sphere. Just gonna pull this out. Now that I think about it, let's go ahead and start with this one here. We'll scale this up and use this to block out the basic silhouette shape of our boot. So what I'm doing here, so for those that don't know, again, up here, texture spotlight, that's what we're using. There are some shortcuts for showing and hiding these, but all the buttons to use spotlight are in here. I'm pressing the Z key right now to pull up this little spotlight wheel. So I'm just gonna use opacity now, turn that down, scale this up, and maybe down just a little bit more. And now we'll use our kind of basic silhouette of the bottom of our shoe to kind of fill this out and go from there. Let's just squash this down a little bit. So we're just kind of working on, with a big move brush, I want to be able to affect the other side of that as well. So let's pull that back up, and let's actually go into movie, timeline, and show. I like to use this a lot for just setting a quick little keyframe. Here, we'll do the heel of our shape down here, kind of line that up a little bit, and I'll just tap on my timeline up there. So now if I move this around, scale it, rotate it, anything, I can snap that back really quick, just like that. Spotlight was wondering about that. Awesome. Well, you might have seen something about that in a recent image that's been shared around, so looks like there's going to be some new stuff maybe, I don't know. But I love the Spotlight tool for reference images. Very powerful tool, like I said. As well as the just projection painting. One thing that I love about the Spotlight tool actually is that you can sample colors from it. So typically I'll use like a skin shade form material or something like that if I'm trying to like block out and figure out colors, just because it has a pretty neutral kind of tone to it, so that when you apply color, it's pretty accurate to the color that you're sampling. Just as like a good kind of base blockouty material for color sampling. But you can sample colors from your Spotlight tool by pressing the C key. You can press the C key and actually watch my little color picker here. If I press C, it'll select anything that my mouse is over. So I can sample anything in my UI. I can actually sample colors from here, from this little boot, maybe my shoelace, maybe the back of that little cushiony part. Very powerful. Again, to sample the actual image though, you have to press the Z key first to pull up that little hockey puck shape. So let's continue. I know we're talking a lot. I'm trying to answer some questions and give some insight on that Spotlight tool. But let's just kind of keep shaping this up very quickly with a move brush. And really that's about it. Nothing too complicated, nothing too crazy, just filling out that basic shape. And just like that, we're pretty much already got it. It doesn't need to be perfect, especially at this stage. So we'll continue on from here. Next up, I want to show you guys another cool little function here in Spotlight. We'll grab, we'll grab this one here, this little image. And I could sit here and, scale this down and fit that back over there, and that takes a long time. So instead, if you select the image you want just by right-clicking and moving it a little bit, or just clicking on it, whatever works for you, you can click on tile selected or tile proportional. We're going to do tile selected, and you'll see that it'll do that. Whoops, sorry about that. Let me put that back. We'll do, hold on, another tile selected, move everything just to make sure. There we go, and now scale all that at once. So now it's kind of proportionally made these smaller and this one a bit larger for me. So I'll take this image now, and what I'm going to do is, without zooming in or kind of adjusting the size of our shape, I'm going to rotate and move this. Essentially what I'm doing here is trying to keep this. I'm not sure if the scale between these images in 2D is accurate. That's something that you can do. We're gonna find out here. But essentially I'm just going to drop a point here and then align the length, if my pen would work, align the length of my boot with this shape now. So we'll turn down our opacity and scale this up. So we'll get that to about there. Drop our little anchor point here and continue to scale up to about there. So that's where I'll put that, leave that. And from here, essentially, we want to start getting this curve of our boot. And we have this point as well. Another great thing about the timeline though is that you can click and drag between these. Look at that, isn't that neat? So you can actually tween, like an animation tween from keyframe to keyframe between those 2 points. But at least for now, we're not trying to create an animation or anything. So from here, how do we want to do this? I say we use a bend curve deformer, since those are always really fun to play around with. So let's grab our 3D gizmo. I'll hold the Alt key to go to the unmasked center by clicking this little kind of like Google Maps pin kind of deal. Go into settings, bend curve, and let's make sure that this is facing the right way. So we'll change our axes, and then let's add in 1 extra dot of resolution. Beautiful. And then I'll just kind of grab this point, slide it down, just like that. Let's click and drag, add a couple more points here to affect our shape. And just like that, we are matching that curve pretty well already with just a few manipulation points. So when I use bend curve deformers, I start off by gradually adding resolution. Much like if you were sculpting, you subdivide, sculpt for a while until you need that additional resolution. So get the basic curve first, and then maybe you can continue adding some more points here and there as you go. But I think that's looking pretty close to what we want. So we'll click on that gear icon and accept. Beautiful. So now what do? We got this kind of basic plane, not even plane of geometry, just kind of a mess of polygons really. But we want to start shaping this up into our actual form of our shoe. So we'll start doing that next. Make sure we don't have any questions though before I move on here. It's hard for me to talk, sculpt, and also pay attention to chat all at the same time. What do you think is better to use in likeness face sculpting? Spotlight or snap images to a plane? I think they're both perfectly fine. Literally just comes down to preferences. I like the spotlight tool more, so I would use the spotlight tool. But I don't think there's a problem with either or for the using textures on like an image plane, or even applying a texture to a physical geometric plane in ZBrush. You could also do that, so that when you rotate around, everything's kind of like sticking to that. And it's really easy to set that up. Just a quick plane with some UVs, drop a square image on there, good to go. And Kanat, welcome, how you doing? Welcome everybody else that's joining us. We're continuing on with our boot here. I should probably stop talking so much and get to sculpting because we don't have a ton of time to do something like this. So I'll just start filling up this shape. If you didn't see what I selected there, I know I did it really quick. I'll talk about it here in just a moment. It is called Move Backface Masking, and essentially what it allows you to do is move polygons on only one side of your geometry. And it's a little weird to get used to, but it's a super, super powerful tool, and I use it all the time. If you guys want to turn it on, I typically use it in all of my brushes. on all the time, except for the move brush. I toggle that one on periodically. But that is under brush, I believe, auto masking and back face masking right here. So turn that on for your move brush, and you can see that if I grab here and pull up, it's only going up. If I were to turn that off though, it would grab all of that geometry and move that up. So very powerful tool, like I said. Let's continue shaping this up. We'll do one more Dynamesh here as we continue to just push and pull polygons around and kind of really butcher stuff here. Really the objective at this stage though is not that we're creating, ooh, and that's nice. We like that, don't we? Let's fix that up. The objective is not to be worrying so much about your topology at this stage, unless you're really polymodeling everything from the get-go, but more so to just be concerned about creating the most basic form. So we're really low poly, we're just kind of as low as Dynamesh will go here. Actually, it does go a little bit lower. We'll just leave it where we had it though, and maybe even, you know what, we'll do a quick little 32 in there. We'll increase that just a tad. So I'm just using Clay Tubes brush to fill in some of the volume there. We'll go back to the move brush here, again with that back face masking on, and we're just trying to match that silhouette. I'll kind of smooth this out a little bit, make sure that we're getting a good shape, and make sure that this is looking booty. Bootylicious, B-O-O-T, of course. Let's see, what else do we want to add here before we switch images? I think we're probably fine to go ahead and swap and probably grab either this 3/4 image. Let's start with this one here, and then we'll go to the 3/4. So I'll do the same thing I did before. Tile selected, a little bit big, but that's okay. We'll grab you, snap that, rotate back, and just make a new point there. And let's grab this. And remember that the bottom of this shape is actually not at the sole there. Does not include the sole. We're just working on blocking out that leather shape. I'll show you guys some cool tricks for doing the sole of the shoe a little bit later on. And I also don't have perspective on while I'm doing this, so it's not going to be incredibly accurate. There will be some things that are off by a little bit. It looks like some of this isn't aligning quite the way we want it. Let me scale this up just a tad, I think. And what I'm actually going to do is create a mask so that I can just drag this geometry up, just like this, way past where I need it, and then just clip off the rest. So we'll do something like that. And then let me grab this profile image one more time just to make sure that the curve that we have there is looking all right. So we'll realign that really fast. And it looks like our geometry, this is kind of what I was thinking was going on here, that we're getting a little bit too stretched in that front area, which is very easy for us to fix, thankfully. We'll just kind of pull back on that. Beautiful. Is there a way to work your way out with box modeling instead of sculpting? Absolutely, yes. If you wanted to poly model something like this from scratch, you could absolutely do that using the ZModeler brush. I love the ZModeler brush. I use it all the time, and we're actually going to be using it tonight. If you guys are interested in just learning more about how to use the ZModeler brush, maybe through like a project-based kind of thing, I have a free video over on my YouTube channel. If I can find it, I think I recommended this to somebody last week, but it's got here we go, 3 hours hard surface tutorial, we go through the whole process of creating this clock that's in the thumbnail using the ZModeler brush as well as a few other hard surface tools. So if that's something that interests you, again, that's over on my YouTube channel. Just Google Follygon and you should be able to find that very quickly because I have this turned on. Let me toggle that off for a moment and turn on this. Bam. Get that at the top of the screen because I forgot to do that. YouTube.com/Follygon. There is the spelling for you if you need it. All right, so I think that's feeling pretty good in terms of just getting that to match the images. So I'm feeling pretty confident that we can move forward with something like the 3/4 and start sculpting on this a little bit further since we've started to block out the shape. So let's grab our 3/4 image here and do another tile selected. So in all honesty, if I was personally making this boot, I would probably do most of it by eye, and then kind of check proportions a little bit later. But I wanted to show you guys some stuff with the spotlight tool, because I know a lot of people don't know how to use it, and I think it's great for using it for stuff like reference images, like I'm using right now. It has a ton of other purposes as well, but you know, this is what I use it for mostly. But let's just come through here and start kind of cleaning up our shape, just looking at the 3/4 view. It looks like this surface needs to start wrapping a little bit earlier, kind of rounding out. It's just like a little bit, if you guys can see this line coming down and pinching right there, it's just a little bit too hard. So let's like use a trim dynamic brush right now at least. Smooth it out a little. I don't really have a great view of the other side of the boot, but I know from experience looking at lots of shoes and boots that this part dips in a little bit more over here, just kind of following the shape of the shoe. We also wanted to follow this silhouette here that we've previously blocked out, which we want to make sure that we don't want to screw that up as we go forward, so no worries. Check it out. Yes, absolutely. Awesome, man. All right. Sounded like a old man there. From here, let's go ahead and just ZRemesh this. So we've got the basic shape. Let's get something that's a little bit more clean, a little bit more workable. And to do that, I'll be using the ZRemesher, if you guys are familiar with it. What I like to do when I am in these really early stages is just take ZRemesher and crank it down as low as it'll go, down to 0.1, and see what kind of results we get. If this retains the shape pretty well, we'll keep it. Let's just do a quick dynamic smooth here. Typically though, when you ZRemesh something, because it's lowering the poly count, when you later go to smooth or subdivide that, it'll deflate a little bit. And it's not, ZRemesher is not the thing that's deflating the geometry, it's actually the act of lowering the poly count, still kind of fitting the shape as best as it can at that lower count, and then subdividing it later on. So you can see there a little bit of a difference if I undo back to that. So it's kind of shrinking down a little bit. So let's go up to like 0.5 K, remesh that, and that's fitting that a lot better, I think. Beautiful. So now we have some fairly clean topology that we can work with really quick and start going from here. We got some stars here and there, but I don't think those will get in the way too much. Not only that, but you know, this topology is not sacred to us. We'll be cutting this shape up more as we move forward. So let's continue on here and look at what we got going on. I think this is already starting to feel pretty good, pretty boot-like. The main thing that I'm looking at here is that this kind of needs to bubble out a little bit more here in the back. So let me add in like a couple subdivs here and just add a little bit of volume back here with my clay tubes brush and just start kind of adding a little bit more of these secondary shapes now that we've got the most basic form down. Maybe use a little bit more move brush. So we got a little bit of a straight into a nice kind of curve there. So that's starting to feel a bit better. If I rotate this around, we can probably turn on perspective if we really want to try and match this as best as we can. And if you really want to get in there now, we could use something with our pinch brush and lazy mouse to start kind of crisping up this bottom edge here. Now for something like this, I would probably not use my pinch brush and try to do it manually. Instead, I prefer to just slice off geometry to get a really crisp hard edge. So we'll wait to do that for a little bit, but let's look at splitting this up into the separate segments that we have visible. So like I said, our geometry is not holy by any means at this point. We're not dead set on keeping this topology at all. What I would like to do though is start kind of cutting out this shape here and looking at how we can create that. So, let's see. Let's just use a quick mask to like block out that shape. And I'm using the mask lasso right now for those unaware. If you hold the control key, by default you have the mask pen brush, which is this one. And then if you hold off, you can do a marquee select like that. But if you hold control and click up here, there's a bunch of different mask brushes that you can play around with. Preferably for me, the mask lasso. It's one of my favorites. I'll use that to very quickly just kind of unmask that area, to anti-mask, right? To hold control to create a mask, hold control and alt to do a negative mask, or anti-mask, or whatever you want to call it. I don't know if it actually has a term. To unmask. Let's go with unmask. That sounds more professional. So I am going to continue here, just kind of unmasking some of this area. I've switched back to my mask pen. You can see I find that the mask lasso is great for blocking out stuff really quick, but the mask pen lets you get, a little bit more precise if you need to. I think that's pretty close to what we want. It's not matching the angle perfectly, but I think it's fine. We'll just continue on from here. So I'll delete my subdivision levels, and all I'm going to do is press Control W. Control W will take whatever geometry you have masked and create a new polygroup for you. So now this area over here is polygrouped, and I can just use a selection tool to Control-Shift-Click on that and select that geometry. I'll also turn on double, which is down in your tool display properties. It lets you see the backside face of polygons. I typically keep that on all the time. I pretty much never turn that one off. Chris asks, why is the screen black? Oh no. Well, I hope that it's not black. It looks like it's not black on my end, but if anybody else is having any trouble, let me know. I think I'm good to go though. I'll continue on. If somebody else is having trouble though, say something in chat. Speak up, and we will see what's going on. But I would try maybe refreshing the page or doing like a Shift F5, clear the cache or whatever. So what I just did there, I did a split hidden operation. You can find that under Tool, Subtool Split Hidden. So now these are two separate pieces of geometry. We don't need this top piece, this little cap up here. This is kind of useless garbage, so we'll just select and delete that. Make that go away. Can see fine. Awesome. Cool. Good. Alright, so now we have two separate pieces of geometry, and I've deleted this little top section that we don't really need. So now from here, we want to take this geometry, and what I'm going to do to this, so there are different ways to extract geometry in ZBrush, but the way that I'm going to work here is go into Tool, we'll go into Edge Loop, and the easiest way for you guys to do this, I think, is to just click on Group Loops. This will be the easiest way to kind of clean up that surface, because it's just going to polish everything for us and give us some edge loops around the end there. Then press Control W, make sure everything is polygrouped, and then what we're going to do is we're just going to run another ZRemesh like we did before. So now we have another piece of geometry here, ZRemeshed. And the reason why we did that Group Loops polish thing was so that we could get a little bit of a cleaner edge around here, and we'll see how it's shaped up for us. It looks like maybe there are some problem areas here, but let's try a little bit lower. Whoops, we'll go like 0.4, see if that fixes some of those more troublesome areas. Like I said, there's a lot of ways to do this. We could use the topology brush, we could use the extraction menu right there to do this, but I think this way is pretty quick, and as long as we're not getting any weird little funky junk down here, which it seems like we are. Luckily, ZRemesher is very fast, so it allows you the opportunity to go through some quick trial and error stuff here very quickly. There we go, getting a little bit better there. All right, let's move on. We got this one here. So the reason I split this way, it seems like it's kind of wrapping around and sewn in here along this area, and then the tongue kind of comes up. So probably what's going to have to happen is the tongue of this geometry, this corner that I have, this is going to have to like round out. Whoops, not the brush I wanted. this shape will have to like curve down here a little bit better to that corner, because right now it's really messy. So let's try doing the same thing that we just did. And we're gonna add some thickness to this in a little bit, but not quite yet. We'll do a group loops. Remember, just a quick way to polish that up and get some edge loops around the edges. I find that it makes ZBrush run a little bit more smoothly on this kind of stuff. And I'll just do the same thing that I just did. Quick little ZBrush at 0.5. And hopefully get something a little bit more clean to work with. Sure, I think that's fine for now. I'll use my move brush to push up and stretch the tongue of this shoe. And I'm just kind of pulling this around. What's awesome about this geometry though is that we can actually use our Z modeler brush if we want to come in here and like delete any edge loops or add in any edge loops or just start manipulating the geometry a little bit more from this point forward. This isn't super clean, but it's clean enough to start getting the most basic forms that we need here. So I'll just kind of pull that tongue up really fast. I think that's fine for now. This will probably have to be a bit wider, so I'll just kind of unmask this area and whoops, just kind of stretch that out a little bit. And let's see, let's mask off the ends of this and use a move brush. Ooh, I did that mask backwards, that's okay. I'm just gonna use my move brush to kind of start curving this around so that we start to get the curvature of that part. So that'll eventually tuck up underneath the other section of our boot there. And you know, like I said, pretty much all just kind of the move brush right now. Nothing too complicated or crazy. Do a little bit more manipulation and I think that's fine for now. All right, so from here, let's see. We got these two major sections. What I would like to do is add some quick thickness to this to start figuring out how far that needs to kind of overlap over that area. But it looks like it starts to turn and tuck in right here, and then it's kind of, you can see the stitching here where it's sewn in. So what we'll probably do is add some thickness first and then start to like turn and curve that edge in. Start working with that. One step at a time, right? So I'm using the Z modeler brush. Hold space over a polygon, extrude all polygons. Let go and just click and drag on that. Give it about the thickness that I'm seeing there, and we'll go from here. Switch back to our move brush and start manipulating our geometry. And the objective here is, again, not to have, you know, super specific topology or anything that we're working with yet, but just kind of work with the creative tools that we have here. Not concerned about anything other than creating the form that we see as accurately as we can at this stage. There's actually some extra geometry up here. The way this, like, the lip turns in there, I actually don't want that. So we could probably delete some of this with a quick Z modeler delete edge loop function. Just kind of click on that there, there. So I'm just deleting a couple edge loops. It looks like there's a weird try there for some reason though. That's fun. I'll fix that in just a moment. I'll show you guys how to do that. So I'll just use our selection tools to grab that guy there, that little weird poly. And I'm just gonna delete hidden. It's under your tool geometry modify topology menu. And then I'll use the Z modeler brush to bridge these two edges, just like that. And stitch that back up. Easy enough, right? Oh, we got another one down here, so we'll do it again. Delete hidden. Not sure why that's occurring. A little bit weird, isn't it? We got some holes down here that we could probably just fix with a quick close holes operation so we don't have to continue playing with it. Not sure why. We probably don't have a perfect edge loop around there, so it's not doing exactly what we want, which is totally fine. Not difficult to fix at all. All right, let's just grab this bottom edge, start pulling this down, and then I want to start like wrapping that in so it looks like it's, see how it's kind of like turning, twisting, and tucking in there? Turning, twisting, and tucking. Wow. I'm like The dude from V from Vendetta or something. All right, we'll move this down a little bit, and it's gonna be a little hard to tuck in there yet, so maybe we can add some thickness to this part of the shoe now. Let me see. ZModeler will do the thing that we did before, which was extrude all polygons. I'm gonna extrude in this time because I don't want to inflate the shoe out, because we already worked on matching the silhouette. And the more time we spend like making that bigger and bigger, the more problems we'll probably have over time with that inflating and getting larger. The problem with extruding in on geometry though is that it flips your normals. So if I turn off double, you can see that my normals are reversed. So I'll just click on flip. It's under tool display properties again, for those who want to play with that. But then we have some geometry here that, you know, we can sculpt on, play with a little bit further. I want to start turning this edge a little bit faster right here. So I'll just start kind of turning that up and in. Again, you know, just low poly, still messy, doesn't really matter. Just want to get the most basic shape here. All right, so out of sight, out of mind, at least a little bit. And right up here. This could probably tuck in a bit more, start moving that, and we'll probably have to mess with the thickness to get that a little bit closer. But we have one other section here on the back that we probably want to start blocking out, as well as the padding around the ankle up here. And then we can start thinking about the sole, the little rivets, as well as the shoelace. And then stitching will be probably one of the last things that we do. I don't think we're gonna have time to get to that stage. I don't even know if we'll have enough time to get to the shoelace stage, but I'll at least talk about the tools and brushes that I would use to do something like that. Let's see. Make sure I didn't miss anything here. Chris asks how I need help with a curve brush. How do I accept it so I can draw a new stroke? Somebody already mentioned tapping. You want to tap on any piece of geometry that's visible, or what you can do is under your curve, or in your stroke menu, under curve, or I'm sorry, under curve functions, click on the delete button here, and it will delete the inserted curve and keep the geometry that you have. So give that a shot. Here, let me close this because we don't need it anymore. Sage Mintish, welcome. How you doing? Hannibal, what's up? Zenonin and Justin and Chris as well. Welcome everybody. Hope you guys are having a great night. Didn't have the right subtool activated. It's working now. Awesome. Well, as long as it's working, I say moving on, move forward. All right, so for this back piece of geometry, essentially what I want to do, I'm going to roll back in my undos just because I have these, so it's nice that I can just roll all the way back here to, let's go about, whoop, right here. I'll duplicate that off, and then I'll just step back up to where I was with that subtool. So now I have that old piece of geometry that I originally blocked out the shape with, and now I can use that to create that back little piece. So let's grab this and we can scale that up and kind of figure out exactly where we want that. Use the opacity slider again. Whoop. Just kind of get a general idea of where that needs to live, somewhere about here. Scale that up just a little bit more. And then what I'll do is just use a mask lasso. Mask that off. All right, and there's the basic shape for that. So there's that segment. Just polygroup that, and delete everything else. If, you know what, I'll undo this just in case we want this basic geometry again. I don't think we will, but we'll just put it down there and hide it. So in case we want to get back to that, we'll see if we do or need to for any reason. Like I said, I kind of doubt it, but we shall see. Who knows? It's nice to kind of hold on to stuff. Typically while I'm working, what I do is I save in a couple versions, so whenever I make a big change, I'll save out, you know, boot 1, boot 2, boot 3, etc. Where did our tile selected go? There we are. Get a little bit organized there. So this comes down here, and then it kind of tucks in there. So it gives a nice curve the whole way down. Beautiful. And then it kind of just disappears. Here, I'll turn on double. It disappears and cuts off right there. So that's not a problem. We'll just kind of get rid of any excess geometry that we won't actually see or need. And cool. Like I said, it doesn't need to be super clean. What we want to do now is do the, whoops, group loops, just to clean up that hard edge. And let's ZBrush. The 0.5 has been working for us at this scale. Or, I'm sorry, not at this scale, at just for this size of piece. Let's see. Let's go a little bit lower. That will do. That's so messy. It's pretty clean up top, but we'll deal with this in a minute. Z-modeler, extrude all polygons, do the exact same thing that we did before. We got a floater off here to the side. You can see that extruding. That's fine. We could fix that. If you guys have floating geometry and you can't select it, what you can do is run an auto groups function. It's under Tool, Polygroups, Auto Groups. And you can run in auto groups and then just select the geometry that you do know that you want and then delete hidden on the rest. But because I can see this and I want to retain my polygroups, I'll actually just kind of select that out real quick and then delete it. All right, so up here, whoops, let's grab our move brush and just kind of tuck that in a little bit. Make some room for this to live back here. And then I'll just use my move brush and kind of manipulate it a little bit. It's okay that it's a little messy. I'm fine with that. But if we want to clean this up a little bit more, what I recommend doing, now that we've extruded some thickness for this, is running a ZBrush with keep groups on. Essentially what this does is it looks at your different polygroups and it says, okay, you want me to retain this edge that you have here. So the next time that it remeshes, it will look at the edges between your polygroups and try to make that a little bit more accurate in those areas. So, let's see. It's not wanting to retain that shape a little bit, so I'm gonna trick it a little bit. I added some quick subdivisions and then dynameshed and essentially, oh, I screwed that up, I'm sorry. What I wanted to do is add some creases here, just so I can very quickly get rid of the nasty geometry that we have down here. Make this a little bit easier to work with. We can maybe do these to the other ones. I don't want to spend a whole bunch of time trying to do some topology stuff. I'd rather just try to get the process done so you guys can see as much as possible, since we don't have a ton of time tonight. So a couple subdivs, it retains the hard edge, it retains the polygroup separations. Run a quick dynamesh, essentially dynamesh, making it forget its original topology because it now has, you know, redone topology. And then another ZBrush, making sure that keep groups is on, which it is. We'll see what we get. Perfect. Actually sculpting some shoes. Well, that's awesome, Brandon. Hopefully some of the tools and stuff that we're looking at tonight is helpful for you guys. So you can see here, if we undo all the way back to where we were, this was our original topology, and this is our new piece. So it's still retaining the same basic shape because I subdivided, creased, and dynameshed and did all that stuff just really quick. It's a pretty quick process, but we still have a star down here. And I mean, you know, take it or leave it. If you want to sit here and maybe go over this with a topology brush really quick, it's not worth the time to do that right now. Just something quick is really all we need. So I'll just lower the poly count one more time, see if we can get something a little bit more clean. Like I said, it's not really a huge deal at this stage. Honestly, I think our original there was a little bit better. So we'll go back to that. We'll call that good enough. Then we can maybe do that to some of the other pieces of geometry just to start, you know, cleaning up the topology a little bit, get rid of all the awkward stars. There were like 3 stars hanging out down here in a row, so I typically don't find that extremely helpful to work with. Let's see. Let me delete an edge loop here. It's going down to the star, so we'll say that that's fine. We'll say that that's good. And honestly, the shape isn't like super dirty or anything, so it's actually fine. We'll just work with what we got. But if we want to add some creases back in there, I actually think that the smoothing that's happening right now is pretty good, so we'll stick with that. For this piece here, the piece that's like coming on top and tucking down and in there, we'll have to probably do the same thing here. Let's see, can I crease this edge loop? So hovering over an edge, spacebar, crease edge loop. This is with the Z Modeler brush, one of my favorite brushes in ZBrush. And these edges kind of round out, so I will not be creasing any tight corners here. Look at all that topology down there. How gross it is. Ew. Alright, so I'll just add some subdivs really quick, run a quick Dynamesh on here, get rid of all previous topology. We're also maintaining the form a little bit better, and I don't have any poly groups, so I can't remesh with that right now. So I'll just run a quick remesh here and hopefully get a little bit better result on the little corner down here where we were having a bunch of problems. We'll give that a second to think. Rocking the beanie, that's right, man. Of course, it's chilly out. Has Cincinnati been getting a decent winter? I don't know if decent is the word I would use. I'm not a huge fan of the cold. I don't snowboard like I used to, so it's not like I could do without the cold. I would be perfectly fine if winter around here just kind of went away. Unfortunately, so the tri-state area here is just super humid. I've gone out to the West Coast only once, and the 80 degrees on the West Coast. So I was in Anaheim, California. 80 degrees there feels like 70 degrees here. 80 degrees was like, wow, it's so nice out. This feels amazing. What's the temperature? It feels like it's 65. Oh, it's like 82. Wow. Fahrenheit, of course, for those confused. But, yeah. We almost had like a tornado the other day. It was so windy, but yeah, don't know why. What are we doing? We're talking about the weather right now? Let's talk about sculpting in ZBrush. Getting me off track. Plus, weather's like the boring topic, right? That's the thing that you talk about when you have nothing else to say. And we got more to say about our boot. Let's see. Called me crazy? Yes, there was an announcement recently for the newest version of ZBrush. I think there was a date for the live event. Was it? Let me look at my calendar. Was it? Isn't it next Tuesday? Isn't it March 5th or something like that? So there's like a live stream event going on, I think on March 5th. Yeah, it is next Tuesday. Cool, yeah. So there's a live stream event going on for those that didn't hear for a special announcement and it should be here on this channel. But yes. I don't remember calling you crazy. I don't know what you're talking about. I would never say something so rude. Yes, I would. I absolutely would. Alright, so we remeshed some topology here. The stuff down here is like all out of whack. I'm not even sure what's going on down here. This is no fun. Oh my god. Wow. So our edge loops, we don't have, you know, nice edge loops running down here. I'll take some time to play with the topology later, but for now, let's kind of continue on with creating the major forms that we want to see here, so we can continue on with the process and worry more about you know, form and creating the shapes that we need, and less about making our topology perfect. All right, gonna come up here. I'm gonna add some quick subdivs and just kind of clean up this shape. Look at this thing. It is all over the place. Straighten that out. Give it a quick couple smooth passes here. And voila. All right. So for the bottom part of the shoe, the better known as the sole, right? For the sole of our shoe, I have a little thing that I like to do. I like to take the base part of my shoe. Actually, we can use we'll use this. It'll be a little bit easier to do it with this. So hey, we are reusing this. We end up needing it. But I don't really need it, but we'll just use this anyway. So what I'll do is I'll take this part of the shoe here, or you could use this part here, either or, it doesn't really matter. And I will use a slice curve brush to just slice off the bottom part here. So I'm just going to take a slice, and I press Alt a couple times here. Slice it off. So I've drawn a slice through there, which gives us a nice polygroup. I'll select that and delete hidden. So now I have this piece of geometry down here, and we can start extracting this to create our basic shape. Or better yet, because this is a little bit flat, I think what I'll do is probably run a close holes operation. This is going to be a little wonky, but it'll make sense in a second. Close holes, and I'll Z-remesh with keep groups turned on. Let's make sure I'm doing 1K just so it maintains the silhouette a little bit better. Remesh. Oh, look at that. That's nice. I like that. All right, so I'll just select this top polygroup now. I'm getting rid of that rounded bottom part. So essentially the piece that I kept is the part that I closed holes on. You could have sliced and hidden either and then closed holes and remeshed. There's less topology this way, so I did it this way. A couple extra edge loops on the edges. We'll keep them for now. It's fine. So from here we'll do the same thing that we did, Z modeler, right? Extrude all polygons, and I'll just extrude this down. Whoops, I accidentally think I deleted an edge loop, so I'll just extrude that down and start kind of creating this shape of the sole of the shoe. Really quick, really easy. Let's make sure we didn't, yep, we flipped our normal, so we'll just flip that back, no worries. So I'm trying to use the same tools here just so we can maybe look at more tools, because there's always a billion ways to do everything right. But I think just kind of keeping it simple is probably a little bit better, a little bit easier. So let me scale this up. And let's go a little bit wider here, because it's like scaling out that way a little bit more than what we want. Maybe we can just manually use our move brush. Kind of like tug it out on this side a little bit. And maybe just kind of squish it back in just a tad. Pay special attention to your reference, of course. The polygons are super tight here, so it's actually retaining this edge pretty well. But if I didn't have all those in there, it would probably smooth out between this a little bit more, and you might want to consider creasing up some edges. Looks like there's a little bit of a kind of extra layer there between the leather and the rubber. I'm not sure exactly what that is. I don't know if that's just like what's connecting these two. I don't know how it works. But what's good is that I don't need to know how it works. I just know that it's there. So what I'll do, what will I do? There are many ways that I can go about this. I think what I will do is, let's see. Let me duplicate this. Undo, step back a couple times to this part. So I have this piece of geometry. I'm gonna grab the Curve Tube Snap Brush. It's a curve brush that lets you draw out tubes of geometry. And this kind of looks like a tube, so I'm gonna represent that with this brush. Let me find the scale that I want. Maybe a little bit bigger than that. Sure, let's go with that. And then because this is an open face and a perfect edge loop, what I can do is start drawing on this and hold the shift key, and it will go all the way around there. Look at that, isn't that nice? And then we can click to delete our curve. And just invert my selection, and look at that. Isn't that nice? Beautiful. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. You could probably inflate this a little bit. It looks a little bit too thin, but it's pretty much the shape that we're looking for, I think. Let's see, let's give it a little inflate, and we'll do that down in our deformation palette, because we can be a little bit more specific with the numbers down here. Inflate, let's, I don't know, let's try a 5. Maybe 5 more. Sure, looks good to me. All right, cool. Well, we got that. It actually looks like the curve here could come down a little bit. I'm looking at the silhouette here. Well, you know what? Actually, from the 3/4, it's not quite as bad. I've made this a little bit thicker than what we need on purpose, because what we're gonna do to create the bottom portion of this shoe is use live booleans. So there's a pretty interesting pattern going on down there, and live booleans are a great way to go about creating those kind of shapes. You know what? Let's do like a little bit more shallow. So let me see here. I'm going to, did I move that on accident? Okay. Let's go like, trying to match the thickness of the heel. Just kind of quickly eyeball it. See how we got like this curve here? We actually want this to be straight. Ooh. So I'll just pull down on that. All right, so you gotta start with the most basic shape first, right? That's how we do everything around here. Pull out a little bit over here. Wanna make sure that I have enough room, like what I'm seeing there. Maybe this can just nudge down just a tad. Scale up just a tad as well. We'll play with it. This is tucking up underneath this little tube though. So let's make that a little bit more accurate. This is just a bit more thin than what we have right now, which is fine. It's a pretty easy fix, right? Kind of move that in. Maybe pull this out a little bit. But we're getting there. Hey, it's starting to look like a boot, right? Let's see. Give me them subtool folders. Folders sound pretty cool. I'm excited. I don't know about the release. I don't think they've announced anything about the release, just the actual event. So I don't know. I know as much as you guys do. The chat has zoomed by, and I apologize. Bruno, what's going on? Hello from Brazil. Welcome, man. How you doing? Make sure perspective is off when slicing. Absolutely, yes. The reason why, well, not always, but if you're looking at it from a orthographic view, you want to make sure perspective is off, so you get a nice clean slice. Do you still do critiques? I have some work I'd love your eyes on. Yes, I do. I do critiques every Friday at noon EST over on my Twitch channel, which is twitch.tv/Follygon with an underscore at the end. Or just Google Follygon and I'm sure it'll pop up. Follygon Twitch or whatever. But yes, every Friday, noon EST, if you guys want to get your stuff live critiqued on my channel. Even if you can't make it, I upload it all to YouTube, so it's, you know, it's not the end of the world if you can't make it. But yeah, send it in to me, email me. Email's on my website. It's just follygon@gmail.com. Send me a Z tool. Let me know what you want me to look at. Be specific, etc., etc. All right. So we'll work about the shape up here a little bit later. Since we started to create this sole for our shoe, let's kind of continue on with that. And let me make sure I didn't miss anything else. Boots are hard. Boots can be difficult. Clothing can be difficult in general. How do you choose what to critique? You send it in, I take a look. That's how it works. Bjorn. Der Bjorn. I believe that's a Bjorn. There's an extra E in there, I think. But welcome. How are you doing, man? Alright, so we're going to be using live booleans, like I said, for this basic shape down here. There's a lot going on, but if you guys haven't used live booleans before, you're about to learn. I'm about to learn you something. So we're going to duplicate that object so that I can insert a primitive cube down here. Turn off our smoothing. So I just have this little cube here, and essentially what I'm going to do with this cube is just shape it up into that basic kind of shape that we want to cut out of there, and then figure out the placement. If we want to be really specific, what we can do is, whoops, let me see here. We can find our profile view. There we go. That took a minute, didn't it? And we can scale up. Let's see. We'll get this exactly where we want it. Hey, and we can also look at our thickness maybe and figure that out a little bit better. And beautiful. So I'll turn off that cube for a moment. And what we can do is just take this shape and here, use my transpose line and just start rotating this around to fit that basic curve there. Maybe use a move brush if you want. I'll just kind of match that. Let me rotate around to the other side. Ooh, just kind of match that curve a little bit better over here. All right. And now, for our cube shape, right, this guy, he's going to be cutting out our negative here. So let's realign this. And I'll just kind of fill in this space with this cube. I'll just rotate that. Let's see, we'll put it about there. And I'll just kind of move some verts around. And I don't think we need to be super specific. I'm just kind of showing you, if I was trying to make this as accurate as possible, this is how I would probably, you know, line up some images and go about this way. But yeah, looking pretty good. If we want, at this point, maybe we can, you know, fix a little bit of our silhouette here. This needs to come out a bit more. And need to come up a bit more there, and the tongue of the shoe. We can see how much that's wrapping around there, which is actually very nice. Tells us that we need to pull that edge back quite a bit. But like I said, we'll worry about that later. Accuracy is not a huge deal, I guess. So from here, here's this cube, right? It looks really awkward. It's just kind of stuck on here. But what we're going to do is we're going to set this to negative by clicking this icon on our subtool and turning on live boolean. And then it just kind of, just like that. Cut right out of the shape. Beautiful. So we've got our first kind of major shape cut out here. And if we look at the bottom of our shoe, there's actually quite a few more that we want to start creating. So we have a lot of stuff going on here. Let's grab our shoe, figure out where we want this. Let's see. Make some quick adjustments. The density of this is pretty high in terms of polygon count, so I'd probably delete some edge loops, but we'll leave it for now. So let's just align our shoe. Ooh, we got a nice little Timberland down there. If we wanted, we could find out what font that was and use the SVG creator plugin. What's it called? Text 3D and vector shapes. It's pretty cool. Love that little guy. Let's scale this down. Get that about where we want it. And you know what? I'm just gonna slide these off screen. Get out of here. Extra shoe pieces. We don't need you. Now we'll just scoot this out. Make sure we're matching that. There's silhouette and beautiful. All right, so we got a lot going on here. It's a fairly complicated shape. And it looks like there's some perspective in these images. So if you're looking at this and you're like, oh, well, I matched it up from this angle, but now it's not matching from this angle. I don't have perspective on right now, so there's probably some tricks going on with perspective. It's not the end of the world. Don't beat yourself up about it. You're probably not going to be able to match the perspective perfectly unless you know the perspective of the camera, and then maybe you can match that a little bit better in here. But yeah, let's like create the kind of negative shape that we're seeing here. So to do that, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to take this piece of geometry. So we got this. Beautiful. And now we can try to create some kind of geometry for this. So if I was going to do this, maybe you could sit here and play around with some masks and do some extracting. You could probably poly model some of these shapes. I say we just very quickly look at doing some masks and using some extracting that way, since that'll be kind of the quicker way to go about this. Let's see. Let's grab you. So we have a little bit of a smaller poly count. And then I'll use my mask lasso. You could also use a slice curve brush. I mean, there's always a billion ways to go about this. But if we want to very quickly kind of figure out this shape, here, boom, boom, boom. Boom, boom, boom. That is my sculpting sound effects. Beautiful. And what's great is that because this shape that I have already matches the curve of the boot, if we extract a thickness from this, it'll all kind of fit within the same basic shape, which is pretty cool, right? Makes this a lot easier. Repurposing geometry that we already have. It's always a good idea. Should have been doing it this way. It's fine. No worries. Alright, so again, just trying to do this fairly quick. Get some of these shapes. This thing here in the middle we'll do in a sec, but let's start with this. So just so we can see the full process here. So I have this basic shape, and now from here, so for the bottom of our shoe, essentially this negative part is the part that I want to extract. So I'll inverse my mask, and this is the part of my topology that I want. Because what I want to do is take this geometry and push it up into the sole of my shoe and subtract it negatively. So I'll take this geometry that I have now, and here we'll undo back, take a step back. So I've duplicated this so we can repurpose that. But let me delete hidden. So I have this geometry, right? It's actually, we got some extra stuff here that the poly group, I don't know why that went up on the edge. It's a little unfortunate. But what we can do, I'll use an edge loop, group loops. Thought we were gonna have a crash there. I think we're good. Control click on my surface with, that might be rounding out those, nah, it's fine. That was just my crappy masking. So what I'm gonna do here, I've just run a quick group loops with the default features, functions, whatever you wanna call it. So control clicking with my transpose or 3D gizmo, inverting my mask by control clicking on my canvas, and then just pulling this out. So it's a little bit messy, but it'll get the job done. And then from here, I'll just kind of run a close holes or dynamesh this a little bit higher. So this is just, you know, a quick way to dynamesh some geometry and get it into the basic shape that I need to cut it out. You know what? This might have the normals flipped, so our dynamesh might be a little bit inversed and explode on us, but we will find out here in just a moment. Let's check out chat, make sure we didn't miss anything. Let's see. Do something like this in 3ds Max. Awesome, man. I do not have a lot of experience with Max, more of a Maya monkey in my day. Alright, so here we go. We got the basic shape of our geometry here that we want to subtract from our shoe. So we'll do exactly what we did before with the live boolean. Here is the sole of our shoe. This is the shape that we have. Here is our, where's our block? There's our block. Let me turn this off. So here is our cube that we're subtracting. This creates that first little section. Where's our shoe at? Oh, there we go. Scale this up real quick so you guys can see. Ooh, and we'll slide you down there. Take up a lot of screen space. So we got that cube subtracting that first piece, and now we've just created this piece of geometry, which we're going to set to subtractive as well. And we're going to use this to subtract from this part of the boot. So what I'm going to do is just tap on my surface with my transpose line, or you can just rotate around and move it perfectly up. Either way works. The transpose line can actually snap to normals, which is pretty cool. But we'll just move this straight up. So I'll just kind of slide that up, and look at that. We're starting to get that subtractive shape in there now. And we can look for reference here, exactly how deep that needs to cut in. Let's see. Something like that. Sure, I think that's fine for now. But actually I'm kind of seeing some secondary shapes going on here, where this kind of like tapers up. So we didn't really take that into account. We kind of just did a kind of vertical extrusion here. But if we wanted to, we could kind of take that and skew those edges by scaling up that bottom surface when we pulled that down. What that would look like if I were to undo and step back a couple times. Here, I'll duplicate this, but we'll step back, undo. And here we go. Here's this piece here. So this is before I dynameshed it. We'll mask off everything except for the bottom edges. And I'm not sure if this way will work or if I'll have to scale this or what, but let me try just running a quick inflate. Ooh, and I think our normals are actually flipped, so here. Yes, so flip. I'll try this one more time. Quick inflate. So I know it's really messy, but you can see that very quickly we're starting to get this kind of tapered angle to this shape. So again, a little messy, so for this method of using masks and extractions, you might want to clean up the geometry a little bit more. But yeah, sure, we'll say that's good. We'll go back and re-dynamesh that up. Give that a second to calculate. So live booleans are awesome. They're super powerful. You can do a ton of stuff with them. What I like to do typically is something like what we're doing now and layer multiple different like negative booleans or even positive booleans. But really for positive booleans, you don't have to do anything extra. You just have that piece. It's set to positive by default. But yeah, layering a lot of these different effects, you can get some really cool stuff out of it, as well as using some lower poly, like ZBrush poly modeling stuff. So I did this very quickly with a mask extraction, just to show you how we could do that. But we could also play around with actually just low poly modeling the exact negative cutout shape that we wanted. And that would be, you know, be able to fit that curve of these kind of little cutouts a lot more accurately. Unfortunately, our Dynamesh here is kind of slowing down on the close holes. And honestly, I'm not sure I even really needed the close holes on the bottom of this. I've had some problems with live booleans in the past not working if you have open-faced geometry. And I didn't want to run a close holes on this because the geometry is so stretched. We wanted to give that a quick re-Dynamesh. Looks like maybe that was a bad idea though. But if we have any additional questions here before we move on, we can take a look. I'll give this like 30 more seconds, and if it's not done, we'll just kill it and open up our quick save file. But we have about 45 more minutes here tonight, so we'll try to we'll kind of reassess our boot here, and you know, we'll kill this. Close our program, sure. I think the Dynamesh resolution that I tried there with after inflating that just wasn't going to be happy, since we're streaming and everything else here, and we want to blind ourselves. But like I said, we have like 45 more minutes left, so we'll try to go through as much of the process as we can. I want to show you guys how we could do stuff like the laces and the little inserts for the what are the little metal rings called? I said it earlier, but now I can't think of it. Let's see. Let's grab a quick save here. We'll roll back on this guy. We didn't save him, but that's okay. We don't really need that bottom piece. We showed the process for the booleans, so I think we're good on that. And luckily, remember when I said we should save this spotlight in case we run into some issues later? That's exactly why. Beautiful. So we're about back to where we were, minus that extra masking cutout. So the other way we could kind of handle that, to go about that, is like I said, using something like poly modeling. So what do we have? We have this cube here that I inserted, so we can maybe just use this, or if you want to get back to like a basic cube, you can come down and initialize a 1 by 1 by 1 quick cube, or Q cube. And you can grab your little cube here, align them how you need them. And you know, I love the tools in ZBrush for just kind of manipulating geometry really quick. I think there's a lot of cool stuff that you can do. So if you want to start, you know, creating the basic cutout or positive shapes that you have down here, you can go about this pretty quick. But yeah, I don't think we'll spend the whole time to do that. But if anybody does have some questions about the ZModeler brush, I would be happy to take a look at a few of those as well. Love me the ZModeler brush. Very, very powerful tool. Rivets, I think that was the word I was thinking of. Very quickly, let's look at how we could go about creating kind of this padding area back here. We'll talk about that very briefly. For something like this, I probably wouldn't do what we did before and like cut out the geometry, how we did this shape. I would probably take the time to just insert some new geometry on top of that, or use the extraction tool that already exists in ZBrush. I like to use the ZModeler brush a lot of the time to create thickness, because when I use the extraction menu down here, I can't pre-visualize the thickness as I'm like playing with it, whereas with the ZModeler brush you can. So if you have something that's super dense, you have to click extract and wait, see if it's the thickness you want, undo if it's not, and then kind of play with it from there. So it's a lot of waiting that way, whereas the method I just showed previously, you can just kind of go right through and do it. So for this though, what I would like to do is use something called my Cube Tube brush. I love this brush. I use it all the time for a ton of different things. It's actually available on my Gumroad for like $1 or $2, I think. But it comes with a few other curve brushes that I can't think of off the top of my head, like a ruffle brush and some other stuff. But essentially it's just a nice tri-parts welded brush that inserts a cube or a tube of geometry. And essentially we're going to use it for this basic shape here. There's a way that you can create a similar effect here with the curved tube brush, but it doesn't have a nice end cap to the geometry like this one does. So we'll lower our Z intensity, get that to be a little bit more flat, and under brush depth, I'll pull that down and embed that a little bit more. So you just click on your curve after you make a change and that updates it. So see how that's embedding in there a little bit now? That's looking pretty good. We'll continue our stroke all the way around here. It's kind of embedding a little bit too much through there, but that's fine. I think that'll do. Let's make this a little bit larger. Oh, wow. Really doesn't want to go over there. You know what? Let's keep this and we'll manually just kind of widen it out. I think that'll be fine. So somebody asked about deleting the curves earlier. Again, just click on your geometry. That'll delete the curve and you can draw out a new one. Or over here in your stroke curve functions, or up here under stroke, wherever your menu is, stroke curve functions, you can click on delete and that'll delete all curves that you have on your mesh there. So yeah, here, let's invert this. We got just the tube of geometry, nice, clean, love it. And we just want to make this taller, right? That's a quick thing. I was gonna try to do that with the actual curve brush, but you know what, this works just as well. Just kind of fit the basic shape here for our little padding. I'm just using a move brush to kind of push and pull some verts around really quick. And if I press the D key, I can see what this looks like as it smooths out. Looks like this needs to come forward a bit more. So let's say you want to extend your curve a little bit further after this point for something like this, but you don't want to like continue stretching your polygons. So instead what I recommend is using the Z modeler brush and just use a Q mesh or extrude function. You can just click and extrude your polygons a little bit more here. So just a quick little extra extrusion. I'll use my transpose line to rotate that, but it looks like we've gone a little bit too far. So we need some room for the laces and everything else there. We'll put that about there. And I'll just kind of clean up the basic shape of this curve. Looking beautiful. One beautiful boot. All right. So again, D for a dynamic subdiv, get an idea of how that's wrapping around there. So it looks like we got a little bit of a rounded edge here, so it rounds at the bottom, but it's a little bit more of a sharper transition at the top where that's like the leather stops there. So we want to give the illusion that that is the case. And we could also cut out the part of the shoe that we don't want there. I was just going to essentially hide it, which is totally fine. Especially during the blockout phase here. It doesn't have to be physically accurate, it just has to look like it is. That's why a lot of the time I don't give my clothes thickness, I just give it the illusion of thickness by tapering the edges. So here, when we smooth this, we can see how this starts to really thin out. So I am going to inflate this, but I'm gonna inflate this manually with my move backface masking brush. We want a lot of padding up here. We got soft ankles. Don't want to get some calluses. Don't want that rubbing, right? I have a pair of shoes that rub really bad on the ankles when I walk, and they're not fun. All right, so from here, what I'm going to do is use my Z modeler brush, and essentially let's just crease up a couple edges here. So edge loop complete. Let me just crease some of these, get a feeling for where we want this to go. So we want this to be rounded on the bottom, a little bit of a hard edge on top, so crease edge. Something like that. It's kind of going in the right direction. but we don't want it this hard, obviously. So let's bevel the edge, bevel edge loop complete. I'll just click, pull. I actually want this on the bottom edge down here. I'm trying to get this to wrap around this way. Sometimes it's a little finicky to get this stuff to do exactly what you want. So I'll show you guys a little trick here, just a moment. If anybody knows an easier way to actually force it to go the way that you want, I would love to know, because I often struggle to get it to do exactly what I want. So instead what I'll do, because it's not doing what I need there, I'll use the ZModeler brush to insert a poly loop. Where is it? Insert poly loop, under poly loop. There we go. Let me just insert these. I would use the slide infinite radius tool, but I'm just kind of trying to do this fast. So let me just get rid of these. I just uncreased you. What are you doing? All right. So now I have an extra edge down here, and I can essentially manually bevel this. ZBrush actually would look at this now, and it'll probably bevel this the way I want, just because I have that extra edge loop. See how it's like beveling it this way now? It essentially looks at the surrounding topology to infer what it wants you to do a lot of the time. So in this case, it actually is doing what I want, so I don't need this. I don't need this edge loop now. So you can maybe temporarily add something like that if that helps. We don't need this edge to be creased any longer. We don't need a lot of these to be creased. It's more of just a temporary thing. And yeah, now we just kind of start playing with the geometry here. This top edge obviously doesn't need to be creased either. If I can, I'd like to bevel this much like I did on the bottom. We'll see if it'll do what we want though. I might have to add in that. See, look, now it's doing it fine. And it might be because there's a poly group up there. Like I said, I really don't know. I struggle to get it to do exactly what I want a lot of the time. A lot of the time it's just kind of trial and error. But it's not difficult to get it to do what you want. You just have to take a little bit of extra time. All right, so we've started to soften that. Got some nice padding. It feels a bit more pillowy than what we have. So what we could do is inflate some of these edges a little bit. So ZModeler, let's say, where here, we'll do the polygon here. Oh no, I'm looking for scale, sorry, not inflate. Scale, edge loop complete. We can kind of scale this out. Start to floofify that. And do the same thing down here, or other way. Beautiful. And if we want to start kind of manipulating this a bit more, just to get an idea of, I think that kind of amount of roundness is feeling a bit closer to what we want. I just kind of tug down on a few of these on the outside edge. I think that's starting to feel a bit better. But yeah, just kind of playing with it in the low poly version while using dynamic subdivs. It's very easy, very, very nice to kind of play around with. I love it. Love me the ZModeler brush. But if you're more comfortable doing poly modeling or this kind of stuff in another program, you know, it's not like you have to do everything in here. I just appreciate the ability that I can use all of my native ZBrush tools like masking, transpose line, all this stuff that I'm really familiar with, just really quickly here to make movements and selections the way I need. But yeah, that's starting to work pretty well. Down here, I think it's better to keep it a little bit tighter, and then we can kind of look at how we would do some of that stitching as well here in a bit. For that, I would probably just use some high-res geometry, and I think the best way to do something like that would be using just a quick alpha, because it's such a small effect on the surface. If the stitches were bigger, I would consider using physical geometry like I would for the laces, which is what we're going to look at next, probably that area. But because this is so unaffecting on the surface, I think just using an alpha is probably the best way to do it. All right, trying to get a little bit more of that rounded gesture in there up top, but that's feeling pretty good to me. Cool, cool, cool. Feels a little bit stiff as well, but you know, it's fine. I think keeping things as simple as you can during the stage is probably for the best. But let's see. Let's look at the rivets, which we could use live booleans for as well to create the negative hole. We've already looked at that. But for the positive piece, a little bit of an interesting shape. It looks like it's actually like a hex nut or something. I'm not sure. You have more problems with the transpose tool than the ZModeler. I actually have a video over on my YouTube channel where I talk about all the secret functions of the transpose line, which I'm not sure if that's what you're talking about, the transpose line. There's a lot of really cool stuff that you can do with it, like inflating, deflating, bend curve stuff. Here, if I can get this. Whoop. Or here, let's do it on a different piece. Makes a little bit more sense. Draw out our transpose line like so, and whoops. Oh, come on. There we go. So you can do like a bend curve deformer in here. There's all sorts of like hidden little functions. Yeah, you can make your shoe dance. Beautiful. That's just by Alt, middle mouse clicking, or Alt left clicking, sorry, with move on. Pretty cool. All sorts of little stuff though, little secret functions. So laces and the little metal rivets, is that the correct term? I think I'm not positive, as long as we know what we're talking about. So let's just duplicate this piece of geometry. Let's maybe grab a ring 3D and look at making that shape. Come down into initialize down here, zoom in on this. Like I said, it looks like a hex nut, so we'll mess with our subdivision levels here, maybe about 6 of these and 6 of these. So that looks pretty close to what I'm seeing. What it looks like it looks like a washer. It's kind of hard to tell, but I think that looks pretty close to what I'm seeing. We could also increase the thickness of this if we want. So maybe something like that. Sure, looks good to me. And then we'll take this and we'll make it a polymesh 3D. And then all we have to do is go back to our original mesh and click append to get that in this subtool. We don't have to put it in the subtool, but I will just so we have everything in one place. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this geometry to create an insert multi-mesh brush. Eyelets maybe. That might be it. That sounds right to me. Or C-section. C-section. Maybe not. I don't know. Like I said, as long as we all know what we're talking about. Which version did they add the ZModeler brush? I think it was. I mean, as long as you update, you'll have it. Just get the most recent update. I think it was 4R8. 4R8, around there. P2, something. I'm not positive though. Like I said, just grab the free update if you don't have it. But let's see. So we want to make this into an insert multi-mesh brush so that we can insert these where we want them here. So I'll click on my brush icon and just click on, we'll just create an insert mesh, okay? So we'll click that, click new. We got a new brush here. And essentially what that allows us to do is now click and drag out, and hey, look at that. We got these that we can insert wherever we want. That's pretty cool, right? So let's take that and go back up to this piece of geometry. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna click and drag and hold, whoops. Here, sorry. We had some subdivisions there just so we have a little bit of a smoother surface. And then I just deleted them. This is an extra piece, so it doesn't matter. So start drawing out your shape and hold the control key. And essentially what this does is it makes the size of your insert mesh based on your draw size. So that actually looks pretty close to what we want, but maybe we can go a little bit smaller. Let's say 60. So if I draw this one out and hold control, you can see how it's a little bit smaller than the previous. So yeah, all we're gonna do is draw this out, hold control, and draw out a few of these. But I think these are gonna be inset into the leather there from what I can tell. So we'll go into brush, under depth, and we'll just set this to like 0. Maybe a little bit more, I don't know. You know what, I think that's fine. We'll stick with that. So that looks pretty good. So let's come up here and hold control, start drawing that out. We'll get one of these. And if you want, we can try to match the orientation of those a little bit better. I don't think we have to be super perfect, but just kind of placing some of these around here. What do we got? 4, 5, 6, 7. 5, 6, 7. So what's great about using these insert multi-mesh brushes is that it's going to match the curve of your surface as well. There's probably some like little corrections we can make here if we want to match the surface a little bit better, but I think that'll do for now. So let's go on over to our other side. What was it? 7 I said. So I'm just gonna match this. And I'm keeping my brush size the same as I do all of these. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We'll just do those really quick. Cool. So now we have our little eyelets there, which is what I'm going to call these for the rest of our time. And then, like I said, we could use live booleans to cut out the shape in here for our geometry if we wanted to make a actual hole for the lace to fit through. So to do that, all we'd have to do is create a cylinder. But we actually already have an IMM primitive brush that has cylinders in here. So I will grab some cylinders and figure out the size that we need here. That's a little bit too big, so let's fix our draw size. Let's try half of that, 30 maybe. Oh, a little bit more it looks like. We'll do 45, sure. Split the diff. So now we can just insert these on our geometry. And I'll just do one side here very quickly. And unfortunately, these aren't going all the way through, so we'll have to kind of stretch those down. Make sure they're poking all the way through, like that. And we'll just do this one, that's fine. Set this to negative. Make sure live boolean is on. And what do we got? We got something erasing this geometry, so that's not good. Ooh, oh, I see here. I duplicated that. Let's make sure that's working. Okay. Here, I'll go ahead and lengthen the rest of these to make sure that they're going all the way through. They're not even cutting in a little bit, so let's fix these real quick. I am using my transpose line to align to the surface of the geometry, and then just kind of pulling those all the way through, kind of masking them off really quick. I'll just do this really fast, since we're a little short on time. Ooh, pull all the way through. Last one. Ooh, come on. Get that normal. There you go. Beautiful. So there's that. Smooth it. Grab our little eyelets. And there we go. Just like that, we have that set up. Easy enough, right? Now, the way that live booleans work, they look at your chain of geometry, the chain of order here in your subtool list. So for example, if I were, essentially anything that's above a negative, it's going to subtract from. So this negative mesh and this positive mesh, there's nothing else above this. So this is only going to subtract from this piece. But if I were to take something like this little tongue here, and move this up, if any of the cylinders there were touching that geometry, they would also cut through that. So to show a better example of that, let's see, where is our cube here? So for example, take this cube and move it up here. And now it's covering up a large chunk of that back part of the shoe. I'll set this to negative, and you can see that it's slicing off everything from that part of the shoe. But as I move this up to above this sole, I'll rotate my camera to update that, it's no longer subtracting from that. So be aware of where your booleans are in your subtool list here. And as we move that up again, you can see the less we cover. And if I put that at the very top, it's no longer kind of subtracting from anything, or if I move that down one, it's only subtracting from that piece. I think you guys get it though. So anything above that, it will subtract from. So cool, so that's how we could go about creating those negative little shapes. It looks like these could be like a little bit thicker. So if we wanted to very quickly do that, maybe we could use a deformation inflate, just because based on what I'm seeing, the hole is maybe a little bit smaller. Kind of hard to tell from the image there. We can maybe just inflate that ever so slightly. We'll say that's good enough. But let's look at how we would go about creating our shoelaces next. Let's take a look at that. You think that they have 4R8 at your school? I believe it's in 4R8. I think look up ZBrush Z Modeler tool, and I'm gonna guess that some of the tutorials that you'll see for it will be with that most recent version for when it came out. I think it's 4R8, but I'm not exactly positive on that. Maybe just double check. But yeah, the laces. So the laces, for shoelaces, I often just use the Curve Tube Snap Brush. It's an awesome little tool. You can use it for a variety of different stuff, including stitching. It's what we used down here to create this little geometry, this little kind of connective piece down here. But for shoelaces are a little crazy. So for something like this, because the laces aren't even sticking up out here, they kind of just end this spot. Let's just look at how we would do a couple of these little segments. So you can just use the curve tube brush by default and start kind of drawing out your curves. But the curve tube snap brush will snap to your geometry, so you might want to use a different brush. What I like to do for stuff like this is go into my curve or stroke menu and go under curve and turn on as line. So what this as line function does is it essentially goes from A to B and does a straight little offshoot there. So let's also find a good thickness for our shoelace. Let's go a little bit more thin. Yeah, it looks good. Sure, 25-ish. And we'll just click from point to point here and drag that out. So that's not, it's not exactly where I want. So maybe it's not going to be perfect on the first try, but you can click to select that and start like rotating that around and adjusting and merging that and everything else. So we're getting into a situation where this like wraps around here and then it wraps around here and all this different stuff. So it's a little hard to kind of manipulate all this at once. But what we can do here, if I were to be, creating a tube of geometry here that's a little bit, this is a pretty complex kind of form that whoa, come on, snap. So it's a little bit tough to kind of get it to do exactly what you want, right? So I would probably manipulate the geometry manually or use some kind of bend curve deformer that we looked at earlier to start kind of wrapping and curving that around. But typically, I find it to be quite a bit easier. We'll go back to our as line function and do one lace at a time. So we'll start up at the top and we'll go from over to under, and then we'll snap, if we can, back from that. Get your brush close. See that red line? That means it connects back up to that. And then we'll wrap back to that one. Ooh, if we can draw that. It's not wanting to cooperate. There we go. And we'll just continue to do this down the entire, it's really not wanting to cooperate, down the entire length. And then we can do the other side as well. So this is just the way shoelaces work, it's all one lace, but at the bottom, it wraps back over to the other side. But what I find is that once you get to this point, right down here, if I can. Come on. Not sure why it's not wanting to do that. So we get the basic shape first, and then we can kind of loop that through. I find it a lot easier to do it this way. But once we get to this spot where we can start going back up, I recommend not, because if your curve stroke starts to overlap, you start getting these curves really close to each other, and it starts getting a little bit hard to manipulate. It's actually working pretty well right now, so I'm actually fairly surprised. But the closer we get to some of these, especially if yours are a little bit closer than mine are, you can start running into some problems. I'm just going to continue on though, since it's actually playing nice. Ooh, it's playing a little nice. I don't know why it's having so much trouble snapping. I should turn up that little snap distance, which you can do, I believe, curve snap distance. There we go. We'll just crank that up a little bit. Maybe not. Put that about back where I had it. Okay, so this is where we're running into trouble because it's trying to snap to this curve over here, which is why I recommended that we kind of keep these separated. All right, but that actually worked out pretty, ooh. It worked out pretty well. I spoke too soon, right? Let's try that one more time. Over here. So a little finicky, right? But now we have the basic lace in there, and we can start manipulating this further from here. So I'll just click to delete our curve and accept this. And what I would probably do from here is take the time to take this geometry and delete some of the excess edge loops in here that are just a little too crazy. It's just a little bit too dense. Another thing that you could do very quickly is just, ooh, looks like we got some kind of floater out there. Just do a curve delete. There we go. Beautiful. So for something like this, you might be able to get away with a very quick low-res Z-remesh. This is 5,000 polys, but if we do a quick Z-remesh, we can actually lower the poly count just really quickly. And because it's a tube, Z-remesher does really well with tubes, and it typically gives some pretty good edge loops. Looks like we're getting some kind of weird junk over here. So like I said, I think it's best to just do this manually with a Z-modeler brush. What I recommend doing is setting your edge loop function to delete edge loop complete, and then setting your face function to do nothing and your vert function to do nothing as well. This way you can come through and delete edge loops really quick without worrying about clicking on something accidentally and doing some kind of other operation. The only operation you'll be able to do is a delete edge loop complete, and then you can come through here and delete just a bunch of these unnecessary edge loops. So I'd do this first and then take the time to kind of reform and work with my geometry a little bit better. Like I said, you could also do this, start blocking out this basic shape with a bend curve deformer if you want to play with it that way. We already looked at that though, so I wanted to do something a little bit different. But yeah, we'll start kind of masking here. You can use topological masking with your transpose or 3D gizmo to mask a specific part of your geometry. What I often will do for something like this, because this is connected, I'll just put a mask down the middle and polygroup that. So now we have kind of the left and right side, or part 1 and part 2 of the lace that we can work on individually. So again, creating some topological masking here. Just kind of manipulating this. It's starting to feel a little bit better though, now that we're getting a little bit lower resolution. And from here, I'll just start using my move brush, shaping this up where I need it. And if you're getting some twisting, I recommend deleting a lot of those edge loops, and then you can re-add in some with some bevels or some add edge loop functions. Yeah, there's a variety of different options here. And just taking the time to manipulate and push this into place, which is pretty boring work. So I don't think we'll spend, you know, the whole time to do this. I'll just do a couple of these. so we can get an idea of the process. But yep, just move brush and then the Z modeler to delete some of the excess edge loops. So for an area like this where it's getting really pinched, I would delete that edge loop, delete some of these, and then what I would do is come through here and do a bevel edge loop, start beveling that to start rounding it back out, and I'll just grab my move brush and start kind of poking around in here, making sure that we're not getting too tight down here for this curve. It's starting to get a little pinched, right? So I think just coming through here and cleaning that up a little bit, start to manipulate that, get that feeling a bit better. I think that looks good. All right, so maybe just add a little bit of thickness here, but I mean the lace would be pinched where it's kind of hooking around that area. We'll just make sure that that's not interpolating into our geometry. So one thing that I see a lot that you should try to avoid is having geometry feel like it's not integrated very well with your other geometry. So for instance, if you're putting teeth in a mouth, you want to sculpt up the gums around your teeth and make it feel like the gum is like holding on to that tooth, right? It's wrapped around it. Same thing if you're doing shoelaces or like interlocking geometry like this down here. We want to take the time to make that feel like it's integrated. So make your shoelaces feel like they're, being pulled tight against some of these areas. Like right now I have this kind of curve a little bit loose here, but if we straighten that out, it's going to be a little bit straighter in these areas. And then just get that wrapping around there a little bit better. Straighten that out. Got a little flat there, so maybe add a bit more thickness back in. But yeah, play with it. Like I said, just try to make it all feel integrated. Something that I've been noticing a lot in my critiques over on my channel. Something that I want people to focus on a bit more. All right. So I'm just using my move brush. You could use your 3D gizmo with rotation if you want to twist this in. We could probably even do something like this and just like pull it all in at once, maybe a little bit. Which worked pretty well. Before you add in, I know we added in our laces and eyelets here a little early, but what I recommend is making sure that you have the rest of this form locked down before you move forward to anything else like this, because if you end up having to make some major form changes later on, you're not going to be happy because you're going to have to redo a lot of this stuff. So make sure that you have your, I'm kind of just rushing through to show the entire process and make sure that we see everything, but just make sure that you have everything where you want it in the most basic level before moving on. It's good advice for anything, in my opinion. All right, and then for here, this kind of lip, this lip pulls up, and then the stitching. Now, I don't have an alpha that's going to match this stitch pattern exactly, so I would probably find the time, or take the time to find a pattern similar to create that, or just make one very quickly in Photoshop. But we'll look at how we can do that here. 1 second. Let's look at getting a decent stitch texture, so we can cover the whole shebang. And I think that'll be one of the last things that we look at here. So stitching, I'm going to use just the standard brush with drag dots and an alpha. And for the alpha, let's just use, here, this is kind of a stitch-like texture. It's not the exact thing that we want, but I think this will get the point across. Let's see what we get here. So I am using Lazy Mouse with, again, the standard brush, drag dots, and a brush alpha selected. You could use any brush. I'm just using the standard brush to do this. But let's see. What I'm gonna do is go into my stroke menu and under lazy mouse, set the lazy step to 1, maybe. Let's maybe try like 1.5 or something like that. And I'm gonna grab just a small section of our shoe so that I can really up-res this really quick. Alright, so we got a pretty dense piece of geometry here to play around with. So we got lazy step set to 1.5. Essentially what the lazy step does with your lazy mouse is it looks at so if we set this to 1, for example, it should repeat at the beginning and end of the stroke. But what we want is we want a little bit of a distance in there for our alpha. Let's maybe use a more distinct alpha here so that this makes a little bit more sense. Let's use this arrow. All right, so we can see how that's working. The actual stamp of our brush, though, is making, it has a little bit of a fall off to it. And that's actually because of my focal shift, I believe. So if I set my focal shift to -100, it should be consistent throughout. So we need to increase our lazy step a little bit more, 1.5-ish. All right, cool. We're starting to get what we want here. It's, maybe, let's see, are there any alphas in here that we can use instead of an arrow? That one I had wasn't all that bad. I just wanted you guys to be able to see what was happening there with the lazy step, but now that you kind of understand what's going on, let's use something that looks a little bit more like stitching, kind of like this. And if we want that to sync up a little bit better, which we can maybe play with, maybe like 1 or so, or if we want to blend that a little bit better, you can find a better number here. I don't know, 1.25 maybe. I am using my mouse when I do this as well, so that I have a consistent stroke throughout that length. .4-ish, sure. All right, so I think you guys get the idea with the lazy step, but you can play around with these settings. Try to find something a little bit closer to what we have here. It looks like we have 4 lines each. So what I would do is in Photoshop, or you know what, we might be able to do this. I have an idea. I haven't played around with this functionality too much, so it might take us a second to figure out, but we got a little bit of time here. Very quickly, make a cube. I'm gonna make an alpha from this cube. So let's lengthen our cube. And then essentially, because we have this texture here for the stitching, and then we have a 1 singular stitching, and then a double wide up here, singular, so 1, a 2, and a 4 wide. So for the first one, we'll just take this and we'll go into our alpha menu and click from mesh. We'll frame that and click OK. So now we have an alpha map. Now we can go back to, like I said, I don't play with this very often, so you'll have to excuse me as I figure it out myself. So here's our 3D alpha. It's very simple, right? But I think you guys can see how powerful this is. We can start to get a pretty cool, quick kind of stitching effect with just a cube. And then for the kind of 4 wide version here, this probably needs to be a bit more thin than what I made it. It doesn't have to be perfect though. So we could do something like this for the double, and then 4 wide one. We'll just do this really quick. Alpha map again, or alpha menu from mesh. There's that. Let's just make sure that's framed. All set. Okay. Beautiful. Back to our geometry that we can sculpt on. And oh, grab our new alpha. Cool. We'll probably have to play around and experiment with the spacing, scale, size, but you can get a little bit more specific with your shape if you want to round those and get a little bit of a better alpha. You could also make a VDM brush. You could also use physical geometry, which is what I like to do a lot of the time. These stitches are so small, though. I think this would be the better route. But yeah, I hope that you guys learned some new stuff tonight, maybe. We've kind of looked at a lot here very quickly. But I tried to cover a lot of the variety of different tools and processes for a lot of the important steps as we went through here, such as just kind of blocking out the basic shape, slicing up to create the major forms, really using the spotlight tool to like figure out your silhouette and shapes that you're going for here, using extractions for stuff like the sole, using some cool curve functionality to create the little separation here, live booleans. What else did we look at? IMM brushes, curve brushes, the Z modeler brush. I mean, we looked at a lot today. We did. But yeah, that's really what it's all about, though, is just kind of finding the tool that works best for you for each job. But yeah, again, like I said, hopefully that's been helpful for you. I'm Follygon. This is the Pixelogic ZBrush channel. I think somebody else is streaming after me. We can check the schedule. I don't have it pulled up, but I believe Ara is streaming in a couple hours. I'm not positive though. But stick around. I'm not the only one that streams here on this channel. If you're new here, there are quite a few people that stream here. Like I said, I'm Follygon. I stream over on my own channel. I got some stuff on my YouTube channel as well, which is linked up above. I don't think we have any additional questions, but I will double check here in just a moment. Let me open up my chat. Let's see. It's basically witchcraft, right? Yes, absolutely, man. Yeah, so YouTube, just Google Follygon, you'll find all my stuff, I think. You shouldn't have any problems. But I'll leave you guys with, again, if you're trying to create clothing or anything like that, I think finding just like a shopping website, they typically, like I said at the beginning of the stream, they have some high resolution images that you can pull from, get a lot of different reference views, throw them in like Photoshop and make like a reference board for yourself. What I did was I used the Spotlight tool, but I would probably make like a reference board so I can look at these a little bit bigger than just having these images to manipulate on my screen. It's a little bit hard to kind of control them quickly, whereas in Photoshop you can zoom in pretty quick, and it's a great reference tool. Or there's Pure Ref and all that stuff. But yeah, I think that'll be a good place to cut it. Again, you guys have a fantastic rest of your night, and I hope to see you next Tuesday, either here at 6 p.m. EST or over on my Twitch channel at noon EST. I will see you all next time, guys. Thank you. Yes, all right. You guys have a great night. I will see you next time. All right, bye now.